What if the most dangerous source of power wasn't hidden in ancient texts or secret rituals, but in something much more familiar, hidden in plain sight but shaping entire nations right before our eyes? We're looking into one of the most unsettling aspects of Nazi Germany, the idea of the Nazi Book of Power. Was it real, or are we missing something even more terrifying? Stick around as we explore Nazi propaganda and the ideology that led to one of the darkest periods in history. If this topic intrigues you, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and let's unravel this dark enigma together.
Throughout 12 long years, the Germans, for the most part, into a machine which substituted for previous. Throughout 12 long years, for the most part, into a machine which substituted for personal freedom, the cult.
To understand whether there was a real Nazi Book of Power, we need to start with the core of Nazi ideology. And that begins with Adolf Hitler and his infamous book, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. Mein Kampf wasn't a mystical or magical book. It didn't contain spells or ancient secrets. What it did contain was Hitler's political vision for Germany. He wrote it while he was in prison in the 1920s after a failed attempt to overthrow the government. In this book, Hitler laid out his ideas about race, anti-Semitism, and his belief in the need for German expansion, which he called Lebensraum, more living space for Germans. Instead of talking about hidden forces, Hitler talked about reshaping society through propaganda, control, and violence. He believed that the Aryan race, which he considered to be the German people, were superior, and that Jews, communists, and others were enemies that needed to be removed. But here's where it gets tricky. Mein Kampf wasn't mystical, but it was a guidebook for the Nazis. It gave them a blueprint to the rise to power by manipulating the feelings of a broken post-World War I Germany, a country humiliated and searching for someone to blame. Hitler's ideas were simple and terrifyingly effective. He created an us versus them narrative, making it easy for the common German to understand and follow. He gave the people a scapegoat for their problems, and millions bought into it. The power of Mein Kampf was ideological, not magical, but in many ways, this made it even more dangerous. It showed how easily people could be manipulated through belief systems. While Mein Kampf was Hitler's roadmap for political control, Alfred Rosenberg, one of Hitler's closest ideological allies, added a mystical layer to Nazi beliefs. He wrote The Myth of the 20th Century, which was an attempt to blend Nazi political ideas with something much deeper, something almost religious. Rosenberg believed that the Nazi Party wasn't just fighting for political power. He thought they were engaged in a cosmic battle, a spiritual war between races, with the Aryans being at the center. He painted this struggle as not just a physical one but a spiritual one, with the Aryan race destined to lead humanity. Jews, in his view, were seen as a corrupting force that needed to be destroyed to achieve this divine destiny. Though The Myth of the 20th Century was not as popular or widely read as Mein Kampf, it added an extra layer to Nazi ideology. It painted their racial policies as not just political necessities but as part of a grand, almost cosmic plan. This would have made the idea of a Nazi Book of Power seem more plausible, right? But even in Rosenberg's mystical vision, there were no hidden ancient powers. It was all about justifying Nazi racism and violence as part of a divine mission. It was more about ideological justification than any actual magic or ancient secrets. Symbols have enormous power. They can stir up strong feelings, fear, pride, or even devotion. The Nazis understood this better than most. One of their most iconic, and now infamous, symbols was the swastika. But here's the thing. The Nazis didn't invent the swastika. It's a symbol that had been around for thousands of years, used by cultures from India to Greece, representing good fortune, life, and the sun. But the Nazis twisted its meaning, turning it into a symbol of their own racist ideology of Aryan superiority. The swastika was everywhere during the Nazi regime. It was on flags, uniforms, government buildings. Everywhere you looked, To the Nazis, it wasn't just a logo, it was a symbol that united their people under a single, powerful image. It became the visual representation of their twisted ideology. Now, did the Nazis think the swastika had magical powers? Not really. But they believed it was a symbol that represented the purity and power of the Aryan race. It was an essential part of their propaganda machine. Propaganda wasn't just about symbols, though. The Nazis used every tool they could find to control the message, and one of their most effective tools was Das Schwarzkorps, the official newspaper of the SS. Unlike regular newspapers, which reported on daily news events, Das Schwarzkorps was focused entirely on pushing Nazi ideology. The newspaper glorified the SS, Hitler's elite paramilitary organization, and promoted racist ideas about Aryan superiority. It wasn't concerned with facts or truth. It was designed to brainwash the public and make them believe in the Nazi myth. Every article, every word, was a piece of the larger Nazi propaganda puzzle, reinforcing the regime's ideology. This daily dose of propaganda was, in a way, the real Nazi book of power. It wasn't hidden or mystical. It was right there in the open, controlling the minds of millions of people. So, what about Nazi occultism? Wasn't there some mystical side to the Nazis? Yes and no. There was one figure in particular who was deeply interested in mysticism. Heinrich Himmler, who was the head of the SS, wasn't just interested in military power. He wanted to create a new order based on ancient German traditions and racial mysticism. He believed that the SS were the modern-day equivalent of ancient knights, destined to protect the Aryan race. Himmler's obsession with mysticism is most clearly seen in his transformation of Wurzburg Castle. He turned the castle into a symbol of the SS, complete with a black sun symbol embedded into the floor, a symbol with roots in Germanic mythology. Himmler believed that this black sun represented the hidden power of the Aryan race, but did Himmler practice dark rituals there? There's no solid evidence of that. However, his desire to create a mystical, almost religious atmosphere around this SS shows the Nazis' obsession with creating a mythology that would make their regime seem grander and more powerful than it was. One of the most famous myths about the Nazis and their supposed occult power involves the Spear of Destiny. According to legend, this spear was used by a Roman soldier to pierce the side of Jesus Christ during his crucifixion, and whoever possessed it would control the fate of the world. It's said that Hitler was obsessed with this relic, and after the Nazis annexed Austria, they took the spear from a museum in Vienna to their headquarters in Nuremberg. Some believe that Hitler thought the spear would grant him magical power to rule the world, but here's the reality. While the Nazis did take the spear, there's little evidence that Hitler truly believed in its mystical power. Like many things in the Nazi regime, the spear was more of a symbol, a way for Hitler to connect his ambitions to ancient history and make them seem grander than they were. So, was there ever a Nazi book of power? The short answer is no. The Nazis didn't have some ancient book filled with spells or hidden knowledge. But what they did have was something far more dangerous, an understanding of how to manipulate ideas, symbols, and beliefs to control an entire population. The real Nazi book of power was written in plain sight, in books like Mein Kampf, newspapers like Das Schwarzkorps, and symbols like the swastika. It was the manipulation of ideas and the careful crafting of propaganda that allowed them to gain and keep control over millions of people. But at the end of the day, the real danger wasn't in magic or ancient artifacts. It was in the power of belief, the ease with which people's minds can be shaped and twisted by propaganda. If you found this dive into Nazi propaganda and mysticism intriguing, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, let us know in the comments what you think. Is belief more powerful than any artifact?